Hello everyone, we have started our Around the World trip pretty exactly 2 months ago, and I think it's time to share with you some of the experiences that we've had traveling during these uncertain times that we are living through right now. Just so that you know where our experiences are coming from, we have been in 4 continents over the last 2 months, well 5 if you include transits. In that time we've taken 11 flights, been to 7 different airports and had to do a lot of last minute rescheduling. In this time where nothing is certain and things can change from one day to the next, it's important to find airlines, travel agencies and companies that are very flexible and understanding. I obviously cannot cover every company in the world, I can only cover those that we have had experiences with. And even of those, only the ones that we had to deal with regarding rescheduling and cancellations and stuff like that. And just so you know, if you're one of those people that thinks that we shouldn't be traveling right now, I disagree, but that's not something that I want to go into in this video. And if you only care about specific topics like the good airlines and the bad airlines in this time, I will put some timestamps so that you can skip ahead to those topics. Let's start with the preconditions for traveling during this time. Time is everything. Time offers you flexibility. And you should also avoid planning far ahead. But some countries are opening up again, others are already implementing more restrictions. Fall is starting in the northern hemisphere, temperatures are going down, which means that the virus might get more aggressive again. People might get sicker, or there will be less asymptomatic cases as we are having right now, which means that countries in the northern hemisphere might implement more restrictions, while on the other hand, maybe countries in the southern hemisphere will lessen their restrictions. It's just very uncertain at the moment. And I really recommend not to plan far ahead. The virus will be here next year, it will not just go away. So that's why currently what we are planning is just like 2, 3, maximum 4 weeks ahead and nothing else. We have had way too many flights cancelled, way too many plans that we had to reschedule because nothing is certain at the moment when it comes to travel. As I said, you need time, especially because last minute rescheduling might happen. Country that you are planning to go to might change their rules from one day to the next, as it has happened to us, more on that later. Or even your country might change the rules, as has happened in many countries in Europe where people went to vacation and as they were in vacation, their home countries changed the rules and they had to quarantine when coming back, which also caused problems when going back to work because they had to quarantine like for 2 weeks. So yeah, plan a lot of time. And of course, because of rescheduling and stuff like that, you need money. Don't go on a budget travel where you have got like $1,000 to spend and nothing else. Plan a bit on the side because if things change, if for some reason you cannot fly back, you might have to stay a little bit longer. And that's, of course, will incur some costs. Let me tell you about the countries that we've visited so far and the restrictions and experiences that we have made there. Mind you, whether you can enter a country will depend on one or a combination of the following conditions: your residency, your nationality, and where you've been during the last few weeks. It's very complicated and it changes all the time. So what we did is we joined a community on Facebook called Travel Off Path, and there we can ask questions and read through experiences. And also the moderators of the group have their own webpage where they list entry requirements for different countries of the world. I'm mentioning them specifically because they helped us a lot. First, we were in Spain from July 15th to August 6th. So things might have changed since then. Well, I'm pretty sure that things have changed in Spain because cases have gone up a lot there. So they probably have a lot of local restrictions implemented now that they didn't have back then. But generally everything was pretty open. You had to wear a mask indoors all the time, whether it's a restaurant, a grocery store or any kind of shop. Now outdoors, I'm not really sure. I think it was a little bit regional. What we experienced is that people wore masks when they were around other people, but in less crowded areas, people would actually remove the masks, at least in the places where we have been. Also, what might be important for you, beaches were all open back when we were there, and also museums and other attractions like palaces were open, but you had to buy your ticket online before being able to enter because they just wanted to limit the number of people that were there at the same time. So basically there were no actual limitations that affected us. After that came Tanzania from August 7th to August 17th, specifically the Kilimanjaro region because we only went there to climb the Kilimanjaro, which has been one of my dreams for many years. And for Tanzania, I can tell you that anyone can enter that country, of course given any visa restrictions that you might have depending on where you're from, but you do need a negative PCR test before entering. As long as you've got that negative PCR test, and you have a visa, you will be able to enter Tanzania without any problems. As you reach the airport, they will measure your temperature, check your negative PCR test, then you'll just proceed through customs and you're already inside the country. And as soon as you leave the airport, no one is carrying any masks. And while in the hotel, they do have hand sanitizers. No one is really enforcing it, and it's up to you if you want to use it or not. In the 10 days that we've been there, we've seen literally only 2 people wearing masks. So if you're looking for a place where you can walk around without masks, I guess that's a place for you. People there are also desperate for tourists to come back, especially in that region, because the Kilimanjaro and also the safaris that they offer make up a lot of their economy, and they are really dependent on it. After that, we were in Playa del Carmen and Tulum from August 22nd to September 8th. And Mexico is currently one of the easiest countries to enter. You don't need a PCR test at all. You can just go there. Sure, you have to sign that you don't have any symptoms and that you don't feel sick. And they measure your temperature as you enter the country. But besides that, it's really liberal. Of course, your visa restrictions might apply here too. But that's something that you have to check for yourself. In Mexico, you do have to wear a mask indoors. Grocery stores, restaurants, malls, whatever. And also whenever you enter one of those places, they will check your temperature and they will tell you to use the hand sanitizer. Now outside, I don't know if it is mandatory or not to wear a mask. I only know that it's not really enforced because many tourists are walking around without masks and also some of the locals. Sadly, as we were there, many tourist attractions were still closed, like for example the ruins and public beaches. But that is changing at the moment. So I'm not completely up to date. You have to check it yourself. But if you go now, you might have less restrictions than we had. Few other things that you might want to know. Also notice we're open, which are a very good alternative to the beach, at least for me. Less salt and less sand. And bars that don't sell food were not allowed to open because they wanted to limit the nightlife. Also, stores that sell alcohol were only allowed to sell it until 9 p.m. during the week and even earlier on, I think 5 p.m. on Sundays. Now we are in Ecuador, specifically in Quito, and anyone can enter Ecuador as long as you've got that negative PCR test. Of course, again, any visa restrictions applying. But the test here can actually be as old as 10 days before entering Ecuador, so you've got a little bit more time. But there are also more restrictions here because you actually have to wear a mask the whole time, even in public. If you don't, you will get fined. 99.99% of people will be wearing masks. I've seen only a few exceptions, and usually it's people doing sports. They are now slowly opening up for tourism. You don't have to quarantine anymore when you enter the country as long as you've got that negative PCR test. And as we've seen, malls, shops and restaurants are pretty much all open, but many tourist attractions are still closed. The main reason that we are here is that we are going to Galapagos in 3 days. And to get to Galapagos, you actually have to take another PCR test here before moving on. And you also need a travel agency to vouch for you. And you're only allowed to stay specific time in Galapagos, and you need a return flight from Galapagos back to the mainland. Before talking about airlines, let me mention our experiences with travel agencies and travel companies like Booking.com, Expedia, and similar ones. First, book your flights directly with your airline. If flights get cancelled or your plans have to change last minute, it's way easier to deal with the airline than with the travel agency. But we had one exception to this rule that I will mention later. Some of our flights we had booked with Expedia or eSky. For example, a flight from Reykjavik in Iceland to Vancouver in Canada, which was cancelled exactly 11 weeks ago. And Expedia was really fast to promise us a refund. But yeah, it's been 11 weeks and we still haven't seen that refund. But sure, they have mentioned that it will take at least 8 weeks. So I'm still hopeful that something will come through. But it's still tough to have to wait so long and not knowing if there is going to be a refund or not. As you know, most airlines at the moment, if they cancel a flight, they won't offer you a refund, they will only offer you a voucher. And if you have booked your flight over a travel agency, it will be way harder to get that voucher. And the process to reschedule that flight or use that voucher is way more difficult and complex and time consuming. While the travel agencies related to the airlines have been annoying, at least dealing with Booking.com or Airbnb has actually been very good. Airbnb actually allows you to cancel any reservation, even if usually that cancellation incurs a cancellation fee. But if it does have a cancellation fee, they will only refund the amount of the cancellation fee as a voucher, which for us is no problem at all because we use Airbnb all the time. Booking.com does also offer way more flexibility. Most of our hotels had the option to cancel without any cancellation fee up to a couple of days before our stay there. And even the hotels that had a cancellation fee actually agreed to drop the cancellation fee after contacting directly over the Booking.com tools that are available. Let's talk about airlines now. And yes, this part will actually contain a big rant about one specific airline. We all know that airlines are going through a tough time at the moment. So I do understand why they are offering vouchers instead of refunds for now. There are some airlines that promise refunds, but because I didn't get any yet, I'm still waiting for 3 refunds. I won't give any shout out to any of them. But here I want to talk about their customer service and their flexibility when it comes to changing flights last minute. As I've said before, plans might change from one day to the next. For example, the required PCR test doesn't come back in time, or you test positive. Your destination might change the rule 2 days before you want to travel. Or your home country might change the re-entry policy while you're away and you have to return earlier. Something that has happened to many people in Europe over the summer holidays. The good news is that most airlines now do offer last-minute date changes without added costs. Sounds good, but is it also that easy? Well, it depends. Let's start with the good example. Back in August, we were in Barcelona and we wanted to fly to Tanzania, and we had a flight booked with Qatar Airways. The thing is that Tanzania had changed their entry rules 2 days prior to our flight, and we didn't know that. Now they required a negative PCR test. We arrived at the airport, wanted to check in, weren't allowed to board, which means that we had to delay our flight 4 days to give us time to get that PCR test. Mind you, it was 2 hours before boarding and we had already checked in online. So we were there at the airport, we went to the Qatar Airways customer service booth that they have over there, and we were easily allowed to change our flights to 4 days later. Not only that, they even gave us a better return flight with only 1 instead of 2 stops. And all that for free, 2 hours before flight, 4 days before the next flight, which by that time would already have been more expensive if we had booked a new flight. That's customer service. That's what I want to see in this time. That's what every airline should offer. Sadly, not every airline does that. I leave the worst airline for later. Let me go to another not so good experience that we've had. That's with Aeromexico, an airline that we wanted to take to fly from Cancun to here in Quito. As I've mentioned, to get to Ecuador, you need that negative PCR test. Guess what? We received the results 1 day before the flight and I tested positive, which later on turned out to be a false positive, which actually means the laboratory messed up. They even apologized for that, but it doesn't change the fact that it cost a lot of trouble and a lot of extra costs. Now we had booked with Aeromexico because they specifically mentioned that they offer 1 free day change last minute. So we thought, all right, we'll book that flight. If our plans are disrupted because of that PCR test, we will be able to change the flight without added costs. Now, 4 days after that first PCR test, I actually got the second result, which was negative. So I went ahead, contacted the airline to get the new date. And sure, they offered a new date. And even though the flight was not full by a lot, we had to pay almost double the price than the original flight just because that algorithm had decided that the flight would be more expensive on that specific day. Qatar Airways offered the flight, even though the algorithm had made it higher, they offered it for the same price. Aeromexico didn't. That's a big shame. It's not something that should happen in this time, especially if the flights are not full. I would understand, of course, if the flight were full, but as long as there are open seats in the economy class, why would they increase the prices if they offer free day changes? That's a really, really bad example. For example, even Vueling, the budget Spanish airline, offered a day change without any extra cost. It's awesome that even a budget airline offers free day changes. Now I will be starting that rant. That's regarding KLM, the Royal Dipshit Airlines. Yes, I'm really pissed at them for what they've done to us. So many things have gone wrong when booking with them that I don't even know where to begin. Honestly, avoid them in this time, just not worth the hassle. Let me start where everything started to go wrong. I booked a flight with them from Zurich over Amsterdam over Mexico City to Cancun because, well, they were the cheapest option at the time. Well, what happened? As soon as I finished the booking and I went through with payment, I already got a message that the flight from Mexico City to Cancun had been cancelled. Which means that basically I had booked a flight that had already been cancelled. How is that even possible? And mind you, I did book directly on the KLM website. I didn't use any third-party website to book with them. Which leads me to the second problem. They offer some options to contact them and change dates and cancel flights directly on their website. But as soon as I clicked on that button, I got a message that I had booked with an external website and I couldn't change anything directly on the KLM website. How is that possible if I did book directly on the KLM website? Yes, if you don't notice, I'm really annoyed because of that. I tried to contact them with the phone, with the different messaging tools that they offer like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. It was impossible to get in contact with a human. Yes, I understand that they are a bit busy at the moment. Everyone is. although I didn't have that much problems with other airlines to get in contact with them. With Swiss, it took me 1 hour to get in contact them, with Aeromexico like half an hour, but KLM a whole day and nothing. Now, because our flight was supposed to be more than 2 weeks ahead of time, I actually opted for the option of getting a voucher so that we could use it later on for the same flight, because it was actually the only button that I could use on their website. All seemed good. I received an email with a voucher ID and that I would receive the voucher within 14 days. So we thought, okay, everything is all right. Let's go to Africa. Let's enjoy our time there. And then when we get back from our trek, we can book the new flight with the voucher. After climbing Kilimanjaro and returning back to civilization, with civilization I mean an internet connection, I noticed that we still didn't have that voucher. And it had already been more than 2 weeks. And not only that, at that point they were already sending us messages about doing the early check-in online and how the process works and the usual stuff that you receive per email a few days before the flight. What did we do? We didn't have any phone coverage there, so we tried to message them with their supposedly A-rated customer service over the fast response WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. Guess what? It was impossible to get a human on the other side, only some automated robot answers that didn't help us at all. And when we finally did get a human, and yes, at that point we had already missed the flight, it wrote that he didn't find our voucher ID, that we should write it down again, go back to him. When we contacted him, nothing. We had to wait like another week until another human contacted us. Still nothing. After all, it took like 3.5 weeks until one human finally seemed to care a little bit. He apologized for everything that had happened, asked us for all the information like flight number, reservation number, ticket number, name, contacts, phone number and email address and everything, so that they could offer us a refund. And we thought, finally someone who cares. Guess what? We replied with everything, nothing. It's been more than 2 weeks since then and we still didn't hear anything. And I'm really disappointed because until then I have heard good things about KLM. But so many things happening that went wrong at the same time, I just don't understand how that can happen with such a big airline. Really, in this time, avoid KLM. Sure, as long as the flight goes through and you don't have to change anything, I bet your experience with KLM will be good. But if you do have to change something, don't expect them to help you, at least not fast. Right now, I'm not expecting to ever get that money back, or at least a voucher. I'd be happy with a voucher, but so far it's just not possible to get a human to really care about you with them. But that ends my rant. Now, leaving the headache caused by KLM or false positive tests aside, I'm actually really enjoying this around the world trip, because even though there are many restrictions, there are actually some very big positives that you can experience by traveling right now. For example, our trek up the Kilimanjaro. We got to trek up Kilimanjaro in August, which is actually the high season, the most crowded season, the most expensive season, the season with the best weather, and we paid low season prices, rainy season prices, and there were only 3 groups going up the same route at the same time, while usually it's dozens of groups. So we saved money there. We had a very good experience for a very low price. Also, hotel prices are at an all-time low, and you can find affordable Airbnbs last minute without any problems. The cenotes in Mexico that are usually crowded, we had almost all for ourselves. And now we'll be able to do a luxury Galapagos cruise for less than half the price of what it usually costs. Sure, if you are the kind of person who likes nightlife, who likes to party, who likes to drink the whole night, this might not be the best time to travel. But if you're like me and you care more about landscapes, nature, forest, mountains, this is actually a very good time to travel. The only thing that I'm missing a little bit is the tourist attractions, like for example the Mayan ruins in Mexico. I would have liked to visit them, but they were closed back when we were there, although right now they are starting to open them up. I think we might be going back to Mexico before moving on to Africa, so we might still be able to visit them. But that's actually the only limitations that we've had so far. Everything else that we like, having good, affordable local food, meeting local people and having a nice chat with them, working in a Starbucks coffee, visiting cenotes, enjoying the landscape, the nature, all of that is not restricted. So it is a great time to travel because we are, well, actually I wanted to say that we are saving money. We are on the one hand saving money because things are cheaper. On the other hand, we are paying more because of PCR tests or at the cost of staying at the place longer. And I think that so far it has balanced itself out, that we are at the net zero, I'd say. I'm not exactly sure. But that's pretty much everything that I wanted to share with you. Sorry about the rant, but I had to get it out there. So yes, I'm saying it again, avoid KLM, book with Qatar Airways, and don't forget to share your experiences and doubts down in the comments below. And also don't forget to subscribe and give me a like because it helps me a lot. Thank you very much for watching and see you again next time. Bye bye.